You are listening to the Political Periscope, a weekly podcast brought to you by Radio WNET. Interviews on international politics, security, geopolitics, economy, and more. Every Thursday at 7 p.m.
Today's guest of the Political Periscope is Þórdís Kolbrún Reykfjörð Gylfadóttir, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Iceland.
Political Periscope.
This is the day of independence of Iceland, but also the day of opening of a new embassy here in Poland.
Yes, 1st of December is a very important day for Icelanders. It's the day when we got our sovereignty in 1918. So it's a symbolic day, and for me, the date is not a coincidence. I thought it was symbolically strong to choose that date to open an embassy in Warsaw, both in regards to, it's a political step and a symbolic step to have an embassy in Warsaw. It was timely, of course, but we decided to speed things up, especially after February 24th. And then, of course, because we have such a huge population of Polish people in Iceland, so we thought it was a symbolic step to take.
Because this embassy will also have under its jurisdiction other countries like...
Under the embassy here, we will also have Ukraine, which is extremely important, and we will probably have to, and hopefully, use the force and the force for good in that regard, and then also Bulgaria and Romania.
Speaking of Ukraine, this date of opening of the embassy coincides well with the Ministerial Council of OSCE in Łódź. You've been there today. I heard your speech. Some commentary after the meeting?
Yes, it was. I had my speech today, and I told my opinion very clearly in that speech, both in regards to Ukraine and also in regards to the multilateral system and the values that we cherish and the values that we share, and those are worth fighting for. They're extremely important to be reminded of because we can't take them for granted. That is something that we have seen. So the meeting was good, but it continues today and tomorrow as well. And it's an important meeting, but we also know that the OSCE has been, held almost hostages because of Russia's action there. So we need to step up and fight for the institutions that cherish the values that we share. So it's important.
During the Parliamentary Assembly of OSCE, I heard some voices that maybe Russia should be expelled from the organization.
Yes, well, Iceland is now, we have the presidency of the Council of Europe, and there Russia has been expelled. In the OSCE, they are still there, and it's a very complicated question, and I know that there are different opinions. But my personal opinion is that it's also important to, hold them accountable and make them listen. When they sit at the table, we can talk to them, and we can. I talk directly to Russia in my speech, and so I think we have to at least be careful and take careful steps with regards to those issues, because it's also important for us to be able to speak up and speak out loud to the Russian Federation in some bodies of the multilateral system.
Iceland is a relatively small country. What can be your help? What is your help for Ukraine in this situation?
This is a very good question, because Iceland is, like you say, a tiny population of 370,000 people. It's a country with no army. It's a country with no real weapons. So there are limits of what we can do, but we have assisted with humanitarian assistance through the UN, through the Red Cross. We have with budgetary support as well through the World Bank. In the early days of the war, we also assisted, friends and allies that wanted to send weapons to Ukraine. We don't have any weapons to send, but we had cargo flights, and they had problems sending it because they didn't have the flights. So we offered and paid for, assisted with the cargo flights So it was a logistic support that was important. And that was something that, we haven't done before in Iceland. So we have now for the first time had all kinds of military-related support. So we try to find every opportunity to assist. We have sent containers of warm clothing, Icelandic warm clothing, scarpa shoes and things that are of fundamental importance for the soldiers, for example, for them to be able to use their weapons. They can't freeze. So we have tried to use every opportunity that we find. Also, when it comes to demining, we are leading a project with regards to demining with friends and allies, training in Lithuania, and so forth. So you have to be innovative. But then, again, it's also very important to stress that our responsibility is also when it comes to speaking up. I have talked about values since I entered the ministry. And for us, I would say that we have a richer and a stronger responsibility to talk about these values, say out loud what needs to be said, and you can see from Ukraine and from the words of Zelensky himself how much they mean and how much power they can give words. And you also see that ultimately this war is about values. These are the values that Putin is so afraid of and doesn't want his neighbors to choose that path. So that's our role as well. So we definitely have a role to play. Everyone has a role to play, and we also understand that Iceland, because of what you said, it's a tiny nation in the north with no army. I mean, we don't stand a chance in Putin's world. So their fight truly is our fight as well.
How and when will the war end? How do you think?
Well, if I knew, the only thing I know is that Ukraine must win, and the thing I know is that Ukraine must win on its own terms. There is no, it doesn't mean anything really to talk about peace without justice, to talk about peace negotiations. If we can't agree on the fact that Ukraine is a sovereign, independent country that has its borders and that they can't be changed. Zelensky has spoken very clearly, and we owe it to them to stand with them for as long as it's needed. So I don't know how and I don't know when, but the thing I do know is that Ukraine must win, and we need to assist them to be able to do so. With weaponry support, with financial support, with humanitarian support, with all kinds of support that Ukraine needs.
Let's get back to Poland. What's the current state of relations between Iceland and Poland?
We have a very good, strong and deep relationship, Iceland and Poland. Of course, because we have over 20,000 people living in Iceland. We have Icelandic, companies here with outstanding staff, Polish staff, engineering and technology and others. We have strong cultural ties. And what happens, of course, when you have such strong people-to-people relations is that, you have very many low-hanging fruit that we can now grab and run with when we have embassies in both countries. On the political side as well, Poland has truly stepped up in after February 24th with huge assistance, and they have, somehow remerged their position in political arena. And we are strong allies in NATO. So now our job is to deepen the relationship even more, and use our strong relationship for the force of good, both for Ukraine and others.
From Polish perspective, Iceland is kind of exotic country, I would say, and very well known for its natural beauty, for mythology, fairy tales, and sometimes I think there are many myths around Iceland, like there is this famous story, I don't know if it's true, that you have bananas growing in Iceland in some places because of geothermal energy. But I have maybe more serious question. Financial crisis 2008 and the banks, you're the probably only country in the world that let their banks go bankrupt. It's unique. Some people say it's a very good example. Some people say it's not. And how is it from Icelandic perspective?
Well, I mean, it was a tremendous shock at the time, and we didn't have any other choice because the banking system just outgrew Iceland. So that was a necessary step. It was painful. Then we had close cooperation with the IMF. So our story after the financial crisis has been extremely strong. We were quick back on our feet. But we also got assistance. We, for example, got assistance from Poland. It was one of the, almost no one out of our friends and allies assisted at the time, but Poland did. So we learned a lot, and of course everyone learned. I mean, Europe learned, and we implement regulations and laws from through the EEA agreement. So I know that the rules and regulations are totally different now. But it was a very difficult time. But we did very good. So the economic story of Iceland after the financial crisis is extremely strong and something to learn of, both good things and bad things, I'm sure.
Exactly, your economy is very strong. You're a very rich country, very expensive country for tourists from Europe. And what's the receipt of this success?
I think it's a lot of things. I mean, we are very dependent on being in a close cooperation with other nations. We, export our fishing industry, our aluminiums, our power-intensive industry, our tourism. Now, our innovative sector, which we have been investing in, is getting bigger. And also, we have examples between Iceland and Poland in collaboration in that field. We have hard workers in Iceland. Many of them are Polish, and we couldn't run our tourism sector. Just for example, we have others as well, without people from Poland that have decided to come to Iceland and live in Iceland. And we have a free market. So there are, I would argue that there are many puzzles that create that picture. And like you mentioned, of course, it's expensive to be in Iceland, but we also pay high salaries. So of course that goes hand in hand. We are rich of renewable resources, but we have also been fortunate to manage them quite wisely, both the fishing industry and the energy sector. So. And also because, I would argue, we cherish these values. We are truly a free democratic society which respects human rights. And when you have free minds, you have, there are better chance of people that can find solutions to the challenges that we face. If you're not free, it's very difficult to be creative. So we are also a very creative society, which is very important for every society and Iceland also.
Let me end with, I would say, fairy tale question. Is it true that in Iceland there are laws protecting fairies? Like mythical fairies living somewhere?
Well, I would argue maybe unwritten laws. If you have to make a decision whether you're going to interrupt fairies, and you can, not. I think we still have quite a number of people that decide not to, just in case. But written laws, maybe not, but we try to respect the fairies as others.
Some words for Polish listeners?
Maybe just, to both that I'm really proud of the fact that we're opening an embassy. Personally, I'm proud, and I know Iceland is proud. It's a big day for us as well. We are very thankful for all of the people that live in Iceland, and then also maybe thank you for your assistance for Ukraine. It's extremely important, and no one should take that for granted. So thank you.
Thank you very much for this interview.
Thank you very much.
This was the Political Periscope. The podcast is released every Thursday at 7 p.m.